Follow along, Catholic Pilgrims, as we follow French doctor of the Church, St. Francis de Sales, through his book, Introduction to the Devout Life. Tune in as we read through this practical guide for living out the Catholic faith well. Hello, Catholic Pilgrims, and welcome back to another great day with St. Francis. Today I'm going to get political because, well, what I have to talk about fits the reading so well. I've told you before that I'm a very black and white person. What's wrong is wrong, and what's right is right. I'm not super interested in gray areas. I'm a very justice-minded person. I believe in giving people what they are due, whether that be good or bad. I'm also very interested in using our reason, not emotions, to guide us. And even though I'm a very dramatic person, and you would think that I would be ruled by emotions, I'm very much guided by logic and reason. If you have an incoherent, illogical, unreasonable argument, I'm pretty much done listening to you. I don't care how convincing your quote-unquote lived experience is. This is why for nearly 8 years, I fought with my husband on Catholicism. I didn't shut off, though, because I found all his arguments coherent, logical, and reasonable. It frustrated me to no end to argue with him, but I could not prove him wrong. Consequently, I am Catholic now. Today, St. Francis is going to talk to us about the necessity of a just and reasonable mind. Let's open our books to chapter 36 of the third part. Chapter 36, The Necessity of a Just and Reasonable Mind. Reason is the essential distinction of man, and yet it is rare to find really reasonable men, the more so as self-love hinders reason and leads us into numberless trifling but dangerous acts of injustice, which, like the little foxes spoken of in the Canticles, spoil the vines. For because they are trifling, we do not heed them, and being numerous, they do great mischief. Let us see some instances. We accuse our neighbors in little things, but we excuse ourselves in great things. We seek to buy cheap and sell dear. We demand justice towards others, but towards ourselves mercy and indulgence. We would have none find fault with our words, but we are sensitive and captious to the words of others. We would fain make our neighbor give up any property we want and are willing to pay for. Is it not more just than he should retain it and leave us our money? We are displeased with him because he will not study our conveniences. Has he not rather reason to complain of us for striving to inconvenience him? If we are addicted to some particular duty, we neglect the rest and only pursue that which suits our taste. If one of our dependents is unattractive or displeasing to us, we are never satisfied with anything he does, but are perpetually finding fault and worrying him. And on the contrary, we have an ever-ready excuse for one that we like. Some parents have an aversion for a virtuous child on account of some bodily defect, whilst they show undue preference to one who is attractive and vicious. So we esteem the rich above the poor, albeit the latter are virtuous and of good character. We are even guided in our preference by fine clothes. We are particular in exacting our own rights and expect others to be more yielding with regard to theirs. We maintain our own rank punctiliously, but would have others be humble and condescending. We are ready to complain of our neighbor, but we would have no one complain of us. We think much of what we do for others and little of what they do for us. In short, we resemble the Paphlagonian partridge, which has two hearts. For towards ourselves we have a gentle, liberal, courteous heart, but towards our neighbor one that is hard, rigorous, and severe. We have one measure whereby to weigh all that appertains to ourselves as advantageously as possible, and another for our neighbor as disadvantageous as may be. Now Holy Scripture says that deceitful lips speak with a double heart, and that to have two weights, the one heavy for receiving, the other light for giving, is an abomination to the Lord. Always be impartial and just in your deeds. Put yourself into your neighbor's place and him in yours, and then you will judge fairly. When you buy, act as though you were the seller, and when you sell, act as though you were the buyer, and you will buy and sell with justice. These acts of injustice seem small because they do not demand restitution, as we only seek our own advantage to the utmost limit of honesty. But nevertheless, they require correction, for after all, they are but cheating tricks and offend against reason and charity, and no one ever lost anything by generosity, honor, and courtesy, which are the fruits of a noble, upright, straightforward heart. Frequently, therefore, examine your heart, whether it is so disposed towards your neighbor as you would have his disposed towards you, were you to change places. For this is the true test. Trajan's intimates blamed him for rendering the imperial majesty, as they considered, too accessible. How then? He replied. Should I not seek to be such towards private individuals as I should wish the emperor to be were I a private individual myself? Since arriving at our new duty station, I have joined a book club. I love to read, and so this was a natural fit for me. It's also a great way to meet new people. And for September, we were asked to read a book called Being Human by Judy Heumann. The book title is a play on words, as human is spelled Heumann, which is the author's last name. Judy Heumann was an activist for people with disabilities. Ms. Heumann starts off the book telling us that when she was a very young toddler, she contracted polio. Her parents, Jewish immigrants from Germany, were told to put her in an institution by her doctor. She would just be a burden to the family, is basically what the doctor said. However, her parents, having witnessed and experienced the persecution of the Nazis, knew what often happened to children with disabilities. In Nazi Germany, many children with disabilities were institutionalized and then executed by gassing, lethal injection, and other horrific ways. These kids were seen as undesirables and a burden to the system. Because Judy's parents recognized the horror of not seeing the humanity of these children, they firmly denied putting Judy in an institution here in the United States. And good for them, that is the right response. Judy tells her story of being a quadriplegic in the 1940s and 1950s and all the difficulties that she faced. She tells the reader over and over again that she felt less than human, was treated less than human, and had to constantly fight for the right to be included. And I hear you, Judy. I was impressed with her parents and their effort to make sure that she was treated with respect and that she was afforded the same opportunities as non-disabled children. Her mother worked very hard to get her into school, even though there were no ramps, no handicapped bathrooms, no nothing for her. I was also impressed with Judy's resiliency not to give up. She worked very hard, studied very hard, and she dealt with some very difficult situations. But she didn't give up and just give in to her disability. She always kept fighting. But then I turned a page and I wasn't so impressed anymore. Judy was telling the story of when she was denied a teaching position because she was disabled. A lawyer called her one day to talk about suing the New York Board of Education, and she was thrilled. This was the help that she needed. And then she went on to gush about how this was a lawyer who would go on to fight for abortion rights for women and how great that was. And boom, right there, she lost me. You cannot, on the one hand, tell me that you don't want to be seen as a burden, that you matter, that you have a right to this or that you should be included, that it was wrong for the Nazis to exterminate disabled children because they were seen as less than, and then turn around and be a champion for the murder of the unborn. That is illogical and incoherent. I closed the book and refused to read another word. I can appreciate what Judy did for people with disabilities, but she was only stumping for her group. She couldn't extend beyond past herself and see that the most basic of human rights is the right to live. Not ramps, not elevators, life. Ramps and elevators are important too, but they don't trump the right to live. To be consistent and logical, she should be a champion for people with disabilities, to be able to move and interact as best as they can in the world around them. I get it, that's her niche. But she also has to be consistent and champion for unborn babies to be guaranteed their fundamental right to life, where they will be able to one day move and interact in the world outside of the womb. That would be consistent, that would be coherent, and that would be logical. And it is also just. St. Francis says that, quote, "We are particular in exacting our own rights and expect others to be more yielding with regard to theirs," unquote. Judy was saying, I have rights and they must be met. But she expected unborn babies to just deal. And deal they must, because they have no voice to say, I have rights too. We must be people of reason, logic, and clarity, Catholic pilgrims. Without that, people will have a hard time taking us seriously. So that is all for today. Next up, St. Francis is going to talk to us about desires. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.